She was rejected by her race, but the human refused to let her suffer. The voiceless among the singers. The crystalline spires of New Resonance gleamed in the triple sunrise as Lyrian Thorne stepped off the transport shuttle, his xenolinguistic equipment heavy on his shoulders. The city sang around him, literally. Every surface hummed with harmonic frequencies, as the Melodian inhabitants communicated through musical tones that ranged from whispered melodies to soaring arias. It was beautiful, alien, and completely overwhelming. Dr. Thorne, a melodious voice called out, each syllable perfectly pitched. Elder Crescendo approached, his tall, ethereal form draped in robes that seemed to shimmer with sound itself. The Melodian leader's silver hair flowed like liquid mercury, and his eyes held the deep resonance of someone who had mastered every vocal technique known to his people. Welcome to our world. We are honored that the Galactic Research Council has sent such a distinguished scholar to study our harmonic traditions. Lyrian bowed respectfully, then attempted a greeting in what he hoped was passable Melodian, a sequence of low, careful tones. The elder's expression flickered with what might have been amusement at his crude pronunciation. Your dedication to learning our ways is admirable, Crescendo sang, his voice creating visible ripples in the air around them. However, I must warn you about certain restricted areas of our world. The mute territories to the north are forbidden to outsiders. Nothing good dwells there, only the cursed ones who bring discord to our perfect harmonies. The venom in the elder's otherwise melodic voice was unmistakable. Lyrian filed away the information, his scholar's curiosity immediately piqued. In his years of studying alien cultures, he had learned that the things a society forbade often revealed their deepest truths. Over the following days, Lyrian immersed himself in Melodian culture. He attended the Dawn Chorus, where thousands of voices joined in complex harmonies that could be heard across continents. He studied their architectural acoustics, marveling at how every building was designed to enhance and amplify sound. He recorded hours of musical conversation, slowly beginning to understand how pitch, rhythm, and timbre conveyed not just words but emotions and abstract concepts. But questions nagged at him. What happened to those born with vocal defects? How did they handle discord, the musical equivalent of stuttering or tone deafness? When he asked, the Melodians' responses became evasive, their harmonies taking on discordant undertones that suggested deep discomfort. On his 7th day, curiosity finally overcame protocol. Lyrian rented a hoverbike and headed north toward the forbidden mute territories. The landscape gradually changed from the singing crystal formations of the inhabited regions to stark, silent cliffs that absorbed sound rather than amplifying it. The very air felt dead compared to the musical atmosphere of the city. It was there, sitting alone on a cliff top overlooking a barren valley, that he first saw her. She was unmistakably Melodian, tall and graceful with the characteristic silver hair and luminescent skin. But unlike every other member of her species he had encountered, she made no sound. She sat perfectly still, her hands moving slowly through the air as if conducting an orchestra only she could hear. Lyrian approached carefully, not wanting to startle her. When she noticed him, she didn't flee as he expected. Instead, she regarded him with eyes the color of deep ocean storms, intelligent, curious, and deeply sad. "Hello," he said softly in standard Galactic, then attempted the Melodian equivalent, a simple ascending tone. She watched his lips as he spoke, then tilted her head in a gesture he recognized as confusion. Slowly she opened her mouth as if to respond, but no sound emerged. Her hand flew to her throat and her expression crumpled with what looked like shame. "It's all right," Lyrian said gently, settling down several feet away from her to appear less threatening. "I'm not from here. My name is Lyrian." He pointed to himself and repeated his name. Understanding dawned in her eyes and she pointed to herself. Her lips moved silently, forming what looked like Nix. "Nix," he repeated, and she nodded, a small smile breaking across her features like sunrise after a storm. Over the next hour, they developed a rudimentary communication system. Nyx was remarkably intelligent, quickly grasping that Lyrian couldn't understand the complex gestural language she initially tried to use. She began drawing in the dust with her finger, simple pictures at first, then increasingly complex diagrams. When Lyrian pulled out his tablet and showed her how to draw on the screen, her eyes widened with wonder. Within minutes, she was creating intricate patterns that seemed to pulse and flow like frozen music. He realized she was trying to show him something about sound, representing in visual form the harmonies she couldn't produce vocally. "You can see music," Lyrian breathed, understanding flooding through him. "You experience it differently, but you can perceive it, can't you?" Nyx nodded eagerly, then created a drawing that made his heart race. It showed two figures, one surrounded by sound waves, the other by color patterns. Between them stretched a bridge made of both light and sound, connecting their different worlds. As the triple suns began to set, casting the landscape in brilliant oranges and purples, Lyrian knew he had to return to the city. But first he showed Nyx his schedule, pointing to the sun's position to indicate when he would return tomorrow. Her face lit up with hope so bright it was almost painful to witness. How long had she been alone out here? How long since anyone had tried to communicate with her as an equal rather than treating her as something broken? The journey back to New Resonance was somber. As the city's eternal music welcomed him home, Lyrian couldn't stop thinking about the profound silence of the mute territories and the lonely figure he had left behind. That night, he researched everything he could find about Melodian history and social structure, but references to the voiceless ones were sparse and uniformly negative. The next morning, Elder Crescendo was waiting in his quarters. "Dr. Thorne?" The elder's voice carried undertones of deep displeasure. "It has come to our attention that you ventured into forbidden territory yesterday. This is most concerning." "I'm a researcher," Lyrian replied carefully. "Understanding all aspects of your culture. The mute territories contain nothing worthy of study," Crescendo interrupted, his harmonics turning sharp. "Those cursed with silence are cast out for good reason. They bring discord to our perfect society. Their very presence corrupts the harmonic balance we have spent millennia perfecting. But surely they're still your people. They are abominations." The elder's voice rose to a pitch that made the crystal walls resonate ominously. "Contact with them taints anyone foolish enough to attempt communication. I strongly advise you to focus your studies on worthy subjects." After Crescendo left, Lyrian sat in contemplative silence. The elder's reaction had told him everything he needed to know. The Melodians didn't just exclude their voiceless members, they feared them. But why? That afternoon, despite the warning, Lyrian returned to the clifftop. Nyx was waiting for him, and her expression of pure joy at seeing him again made his chest tight with unexpected emotion. She had been working on something, a complex three-dimensional sculpture made from the strange, sound-absorbing rocks of the region. As Lyrian examined it more closely, he realized it was a representation of harmonic frequencies made visible. The sculpture showed how different tones interacted, creating resonances and conflicts that would be impossible for someone without perfect pitch to detect audibly. But Nyx had captured it all in stone. "This is incredible," he whispered. "You understand acoustic theory better than most of our trained physicists." For the first time, he saw her try to speak, really try. Her lips moved carefully, her throat working silently. When no sound came, tears gathered in her eyes, but she didn't look away from him. "Nyx," Lyrian said gently, stepping closer. Without thinking, he reached out and touched her hand. "You don't need to change for me. You're perfect as you are." She stared at their joined hands, then looked up at him with an expression of wonder. In that moment, Lyrian realized that what had begun as academic curiosity was becoming something far more dangerous and far more precious. In the space between sound and silence, between two entirely different species, something extraordinary was being born. As they sat together watching the triple sunset paint the sky in impossible colors, neither of them noticed the small surveillance drone hovering at the edge of the cliff, its sensors recording everything for the Melodian Council's review. Finding new harmonies. 3 weeks had passed since that first encounter on the clifftop, and Lyrian's daily visits to the mute territories had become the highlight of both their lives. Nyx had fashioned a small shelter from the sound-absorbing stones, creating a space that felt intimate and protected from the harsh winds that swept across the barren landscape. More importantly, she had been learning. "Lyrian," she said carefully, her voice barely above a whisper but audible for the first time. The sound was rough, unused but unmistakably beautiful in its imperfection. "Yes," he breathed, his heart racing. Over the weeks she had been practicing with him, slowly training vocal cords that had never been used for speech. Her voice was unlike any melodian he had heard, lacking their natural harmonic resonance but possessing a raw, honest quality that moved him deeply. "Thank you," she managed, the words slightly slurred but clear enough to understand. "For seeing me." Lyrian reached for her hands, a gesture that had become natural between them. "I don't just see you, Nyx. I understand you." It was true. Through their unique combination of spoken words, drawings, and an increasingly complex sign language they had developed together, Lyrian had come to know Nyx better than anyone in his life. She was brilliant. Her understanding of acoustic theory rivaled that of master physicists. She was creative, fashioning art from stone and metal that captured mathematical concepts in ways that took his breath away, and she was kind, with a gentleness born from understanding what it meant to be rejected and alone. "Show me," she said, pointing to his tablet where he had been working on translating melodian harmonic poetry into visual representations. As Lyrian pulled up his latest work, Nyx studied the patterns with intense concentration. Then she shook her head and took the tablet from him. Her fingers moved across the screen with practiced ease, transforming his crude approximations into something extraordinary. The visual poem she created seemed to pulse and flow like living music, each line building on the last to create a symphony of light and color. "How do you do that?" he asked in wonder. Nyx touched her temple, then her heart, then pointed to the tablet. She experienced music as synesthesia, sound translated into visual and emotional experiences that were arguably richer than what her vocal-gifted people experienced. She had spent her entire life seeing the music around her, understanding it, in ways that the singers themselves could never imagine. Their moment of shared discovery was interrupted by the sound of approaching hoverbikes. Lyrian's blood ran cold as he recognized the distinctive harmonic engines of melodian vehicles. Elder Crescendo appeared at the edge of their small sanctuary, flanked by 2 other council members. Behind them, to Lyrian's shock, stood a young, melodian woman whose silver hair and delicate features marked her as clearly related to Nyx. "Harmony," Nyx whispered, her newly found voice breaking with emotion. The younger woman's face was a mask of conflicted emotions as she looked at her. "Sister." When she spoke, her voice carried the perfect pitch expected of her people, but there was sadness in every note. "Sister, you must stop this madness. The council has been patient, but your corruption of the human researcher ends now." "The human will leave immediately," Elder Crescendo announced, his harmonics creating visible distortions in the air around them. "His research permit has been revoked. As for you, Voidborn, your contamination of an honored guest brings shame upon our entire world." Nyx shrank back as if physically struck by the word Voidborn, clearly a deeply painful slur. But before Lyrian could respond, she stood up, her chin raised in defiance. For the first time since he had known her, she looked directly at the elder and spoke. "I am not void," she said, in her rough, imperfect voice. "I am different." And he sees that difference as beautiful. The gasps from the Melodian delegation were audible. None of them had ever heard one of the voiceless speak before. Harmony's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock and something that might have been hope. "Impossible," Crescendo hissed. "The cursed cannot learn true speech." "She doesn't need to sound like you to have a voice," Lyrian said, stepping protectively in front of Nyx. "Your people cast her out because she was different, not because she was broken. You were afraid of what you didn't understand." "Enough." The elder's voice rose to a painful pitch. "Guards, escort the human to his transport." He leaves within the hour. As the guards moved forward, Nick suddenly ran to her workshop area and grabbed something, a device she had been working on for days. It was roughly spherical, made from the resonant crystals found in the city combined with the sound-absorbing stones of the mute territories. As she activated it, something extraordinary happened. The device began to translate the visual patterns she perceived into audible harmonics. Her synesthetic experience of music became something others could hear, complex layered compositions that no traditional melodian throat could produce. The music was alien and beautiful, incorporating mathematical relationships that pushed the boundaries of their harmonic theory. "This is what I hear," Nick said, her voice growing stronger. "This is what the void shows me. Not emptiness, complexity." Even Elder Crescendo seemed stunned into silence. The music Nix's device produced was undeniably beautiful, but it was also completely unprecedented. It challenged everything the Melodians believed about their own superiority. "Sister," Harmony whispered, stepping forward despite the elder's warning gesture. "Is this really what you experience? All this time you've been hearing music we cannot?" Nix nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Every moment, every day, I hear the songs in everything, in the wind, in the crystal formations, in the way light bends through the atmosphere. I tried to show people, but no one would look." "I looked," Lyrian said softly, "and I saw someone extraordinary." That's when the real crisis began. Alarms started sounding from the direction of new resonance, a deep, urgent thrumming that even the non-Melodians could feel in their bones. One of the council members pressed his hand to a communication crystal, and his face went pale. "The resonance crystals are failing," he announced in barely controlled panic. "The harmonic frequencies that maintain our atmospheric processors are falling out of alignment. If we cannot recalibrate them within hours, our air will become unbreathable." Elder Crescendo's expression shifted from anger to desperate calculation. The resonance crystals were the foundation of Melodian civilization, requiring perfect harmonic balance to function. Their greatest engineers had been working for decades to fully understand the mathematical relationships that kept them stable. "The equations," Lyrian said suddenly, looking at Nix. "Your mathematical models of harmonic interaction? They weren't just art, were they? They were solutions." Nix nodded eagerly and ran to her tablet, pulling up the complex visual representations she had created. What looked like abstract art to most observers were actually three-dimensional models of harmonic mathematics that accounted for variables the traditional Melodian approach had missed. "She can fix it," Lyrian told the stunned council. "Her understanding of acoustic theory is beyond anything I've seen, but she needs access to the crystal chamber." The silence stretched painfully as Elder Crescendo weighed the impossible choice before him. Allow the cursed one into their most sacred space, or watch their civilization crumble. "Please," Harmony said, her voice breaking into beautiful, complex harmonies that spoke of love, regret, and desperate hope. "Let my sister help. Let her prove what she's always been, one of us." The race against time that followed would become legend among the Melodians. Nix, accompanied by Lyrian and a handful of the most progressive council members, entered the crystal chamber for the first time in her life. The massive resonance crystals towered above them, their harmonics gradually falling into dangerous discord. Working with her device and her intuitive understanding of harmonic mathematics, Nix began the delicate process of retuning the crystals. Her visual representations of sound allowed her to see patterns that pure auditory analysis had missed. Slowly, painfully, the crystals began to sing in harmony once more. As the atmospheric processors came back online and the crisis passed, something fundamental shifted in Melodian society. Elder Crescendo, his worldview shattered but his people saved, looked at Nix with something approaching respect. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we have been too hasty in our judgments about the nature of difference." In the days that followed, Lyrian's research permit was quietly reinstated. More importantly, a small group of progressive Melodians began visiting the mute territories, eager to learn about the alternative ways of experiencing music that Nix represented. Harmony was among the first, rebuilding the relationship with her sister that fear and prejudice had nearly destroyed. "Will you stay?" Nix asked one evening as they sat together watching the triple sunset. Her voice was stronger now, more confident, though it would never sound like a traditional melodian's. "Try to make me leave," Lyrian replied, taking her hand in his. "We're creating something new here, a bridge between different kinds of understanding. I want to see where it leads." Nix smiled and activated her device, filling the air with music that was neither purely human nor purely melodian, but something entirely new. In the growing darkness, their combined voices, one rough and untrained, the other warm and human, joined with the impossible harmonies of her machine to create a song that had never existed before. It was the sound of acceptance. It was the sound of love finding a way. And it was only the beginning of the harmony they would build together, note by precious note, in the space between silence and song.